Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Hans Scanlon Recruiter Performance Training Program webinar. Say that quickly 5 times. We're thrilled you've joined us today to hear more about what this program involves, why it's so critical to today's market, particularly in an age of AI, where we believe recruiter performance and recruiter capability are becoming one of the most defining competitive advantages in executive search. I'm Richard Stein, CEO of HSiQ Talent Intelligence, the division of Hans Scanlon, with my co-founder, Scott Scanlon. For those who know me, you'll know that I have a very simple philosophy. If it isn't fun, you're probably not learning. And if everyone leaves today with neat notes, no stories, no laughs, and no arguments, then we've probably missed the point. Over the course of my career, I have played almost every instrument in the executive search symphony, from junior researcher to client partner, chief growth officer, CEO. And I've experienced the highs of the industry, but equally important, I've experienced the tremendous setbacks, the pressure, the unpredictability, and the operational challenges that recruiters and search professionals face every day. FAIL, F-A-I-L, FAIL has always, in my view, stood for first attempt in learning. And no has never meant no, but for me, it's meant next opportunity. So this program largely came about from repeated requests from HR professionals, senior ones in banks, corporations, and CEOs of executive search firms who want to see better practices and a best-in-class approach to the industry. Believe it or not, this is the first program of its kind in 50 years that has been invented, and I am very happy to be part of it with the team. What they're increasingly demanding is greater trust, greater rigor, more discipline, stronger communication, more thoughtful relationships from their recruiters. At the same time, CEOs of your search firms and other search firms are looking for something equally more important. They want consistent recruiter performance. They want more predictable revenue streams and stronger execution and greater commercial reliability across their organizations. This program was built to address both sides of that equation, to help recruiters and firms navigate the challenges more effectively and to help many of you avoid the mistakes that hold you back. Today, I'm joined by Walker Manning on our team. Thank you, Walker, for your help in terms of getting this smoothly done. And if there are problems with the performance, we'll blame him. Let's dive right into the program to give you a roadmap of exactly what the modules are. Let's get right into this. Let's get, to sort of tell you what's going on and what to expect. Each module is 2 hours from 12 to 2. The first one will begin on June 15th. It's winning new search work. July the 6th is pitching and closing retained searches. August the 3rd is running a high quality search process. August the 17th is finding and engaging the right candidates. We've had a lot of requests for that. September the 8th is assessing candidates with confidence, and September the 14th is managing clients day to day. October the 5th is using market insight to win work. November the 2nd takes us to understanding compensation and offers. We get to November the 30th around Thanksgiving, and that is using tools, data, and AI the right way. There's a lot of AI to be expected in this in ways that you will never have used it before, and how to leverage it better. And December the 7th is building focus in your market. So the time we spend together today will be divided into a few segments. First, we're going to discuss the core industry problem this program was actually built to solve, and why recruiter performance has become such an important issue, not just to you, but to the people in your organizations that love you. Second, we're going to explain what the program is, and equally more important, what the program is not. And third, we will walk through the structure of the program itself, including the modules, the outcomes, and how firms can apply this directly to improve recruiter performance, and you can use it to improve your own performance. Finally, we'll have some Q&A at the end, and that's important. But most importantly today, from a practical point of view, we have to be practical, direct, and highly actionable. To give you specifics, what to expect from the recruiter program, training program, and when to expect it. It's not theory. There's no generic frameworks, only what actually works in recruiting and executive search today. The recruiting and executive search industry is at a crossroads. At a crossroads, they say? Yes, at a crossroads. We have more technology than ever before. Check. We have more data. Check. We have more platforms. Check. We have more AI tools. Check. And we have more automation. Check. Yet despite all of that, outcomes across the industry remain remarkably inconsistent and poor. Many recruiters today, including many who have come and many who couldn't be here today but will join us later, struggle despite having access to exactly the same tools that everybody else has. And that's why this program was specifically built, because the market has invested heavily in infrastructure around recruiting, but it has materially underinvested in the actual performance system behind recruiting itself. This is not a training program as much as a performance system built for how actually recruiting works. But before we begin the discussion, there's a very short video I'd like you to see. What would a webinar be without a video? And it's the famous Apple Think Different commercial from 1997. To some of us, 1997 seems like 50 years ago, but it wasn't. At the same time, people thought this commercial was extremely weird and unusual. It was black and white. It featured most of the people in it who had passed away dozens of years and years ago, but they asked a simple question: what was the point of this commercial? And Apple, and God bless Steve Jobs, Apple said it had nothing to do with technology. The point was about people. The point was about original thinking. The point was about courage and seeing the world differently before the rest of the market catches up to you. We've all been in that situation, so we know what I'm talking about. And in many ways, this is exactly what today's webinar and the broader training program's about. What will continue to separate exceptional recruiters from just everyone else? It's going to be judgment, creativity, trust, communication, commercial instinct, and the ability to think differently and build relationships. It is not about hiding behind AI. Those themes are going to run through today's session with our great panelists, and they'll also run through every module in this training program. Let's look.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Well, let me now briefly introduce our outstanding panelists. First, we're joined by Jacqueline Facita. Jackie built and scaled one of the most sophisticated global organizations in the world, Citi and Salomon, in her capacity as head of talent acquisition. She brings an extraordinary perspective around talent acquisition, scale, hiring, and how recruiting directly impacts enterprise performance. We're joined by Mahen Kurithrami. Mahen has deep experience in corporate talent acquisition at Xerox and BlackRock and American Century, where he ran senior roles there. And I had the pleasure of working with him in a previous incarnation. And so he is excellent. I had the pleasure also of working with Jennifer Castro at Korn Ferry. Jennifer has an outstanding background advising growth stage and private equity backed companies on leadership hiring, including senior leadership work at True Search, where she is right now. Her expertise around identifying non-obvious talent and thinking about leadership assessment is very, very important. And Michael Nelson, we're thrilled that Michael could join us. Michael has spent his life on Wall Street helping to build out very important prestigious banks and investment banks and financial services firms, and he's currently at Sheffield Hayworth. And Marnie spent her career at Spencer Stewart, Korn Ferry with me, and also is now CEO of her own firm. She has enormous amount of experience advising leadership teams on complex founder-led and mission-driven environments. So thank you all for being here. So let's start with the first question in terms of the problem we're solving in the Recruiter Performance Training Program. Our industry has heavily invested in AI, CRM tools, automation, data platforms, but we have underinvested in recruiter capability. Many firms have better tools, not necessarily better recruiters. And clients increasingly want more from their firms, not just candidate introductions. So they want judgment, they want a lot of other things. The first question to the team and the panel is, has the candidate experience become the most overlooked competitive advantage in search, especially when candidates often become clients? Let me say that one more time. Has the candidate experience in recruiting become the most overlooked competitive advantage in search when candidates often become clients? I'll take it over to the team. Jennifer?
I'll take a crack at it.
Good.
Absolutely, the answer to the question. And it stuns me, Richard, and how many recruiters place someone in a job, and then that's the end of it. And I hear this all the time, and I'll say, who placed you in your last job? And they'll say, I haven't heard from him or her in 5 years. And wow, talk about losing low-hanging fruit. I have one client right now that I placed once, and I've placed in 2 other CEO roles, so 3 CEO roles, because the relationship was not only strong and trustworthy during the search process, but after the placement took place, there was a relationship there. It just doesn't and shouldn't die. And so there was just constant, but it has to be genuine, authentic follow-up. People know when it's authentic, they know when it's not. But I really believe if you put somebody into a big job, I mean, this is a life-changing experience for them. You have engineered this.
It's a life-changing experience if you're a VP, let alone a CEO.
Yes,
Yes.
at any level. And you're part of their lives, and you're part of their, even call it informal board of advisors. And I just think it's just a lost opportunity for not just the recruiter and their opportunity to advance professionally, but for the person they've put in that role as well. And so I think it's this should be a mantra, is that this is a lifelong relationship. I was trained and I lived in Japan for many, many years, and it was always, nothing was transactional. It was about building relationships through a lifetime. I never forgot that.
Thank you. Anyone else on the team would like to?
Yeah, I'd like to add something. Marnie, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think with the advent of all these tools and, with AR just breathing down our necks, it's very easy to overlook the candidate experience in the spirit of budget, time to fill, and all of those other things that impose upon having a good relationship with the candidate. I think it's all about relationship. I think you're right. I think that even when people fall off the short list, those are still, it's a treasure trove of names and relationships that you can cultivate for future use. And I think sometimes people are very short-sighted because they'll only work with the person that's going to be the one in the job and forget everyone else. So I couldn't agree with you more.
And just to follow on what you're saying, Jackie, I think also the other part of the candidate experience is, as someone, I view it as the most important part of the process, right? More often than not, the recruiter is the first point of contact with the candidate. And so that's their first experience with your company. It's the single best marketing tool because you can write as much as you want about the culture and the company, but the recruiter, and even if it's an internal or an agency recruiter, they're living that culture for you and they become an extension of your business. So I think the candidate experience is so important to get someone into the company and really make them feel wanted.
Agree.
I have a thought on this, but Richard, I don't want to take up too much time. I'll be real quick.
What's your thought?
I think we'll get into this a little bit more with some of the other questions, but when we talk about candidate experience and success and long-term relationships, I mean, we can't forget the fact that when we place someone in a job, Marnie, to your point, we have to stay close to them. I think the most successful hires that I've had have been, you have to check in. Are there issues with onboarding? How are you feeling about the new job? Kind of being the liaison, communicating that back to the client, to the leadership team to be helpful there. I mean, I find that to be incredibly helpful in building relationships long-term, just that kind of first year window in particular.
Yep.
Super. The program is really about winning work, execution quality, candidate conversion, client management, communication consistency. Everybody watching this webinar and everybody who's going to watch it tomorrow and the day after are going to realize, yes, that's what we need. The training isn't about onboarding. It's not LinkedIn training. It's not ATS training. It's not compliance. It's practical performance improvement, which is very important because inconsistency costs dollars and no one wants to lose revenue. My next question for the panel is, what separates a good recruiter from a truly, really, 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 really good recruiter? What is it that separates good recruiters from really, truly elite ones? Love your thoughts on that.
I'd like to jump on this. I think a good recruiter will go out and identify talent, present you with names. I think a successful recruiter will really, or an elite recruiter, as you put in your question, really understands true assessment, can influence the way the hiring is going one way or another, communicates through the process. One note is, and I don't want to take up all of the time here, on the internal side, I think recruiting, the recruiters should know what impact they will have while working with a search firm. So I'm going to take it from the opposite end. When my team used to call on a search firm, one of the questions they would ask themselves is, how much value will I bring to this process? If it's a very highly specialized role, obviously the recruiter is not going to have a very in-depth knowledge of it. However, you can make yourself very impactful by doing all of the things that we talked about before, shepherding them through the process, ensuring the cadence of the search is going right, just making yourself invaluable to other ways and not just inserting yourself in the process. So I think you have to know your worth. A good recruiter will know their worth going into a search.
I have a couple of thoughts on this as well. One certainly related to the process of dealing with a client, and my own experience where I feel I've been most successful is and had the best relationships with clients have been the clients that have been open to having me ask them the really tough questions and push back on them. And I do think that is a quality that separates good versus elite. I also grew up in Spencer Stewart, and many of you know the name Tom Neff, who was a very, very famous headhunter, the only person to ever have the cover of a major business magazine. And over the years, a lot of us at Spencer, we tried to dig in on what made Tom Neff elite. what made him the guy. He wasn't by any means that outgoing. He didn't have a lot of charisma, but he was a student of business like I have never seen anyone in my life. He read everything, he studied everything. So he knew how to go in and talk with clients and talk with authority. He took it upon himself to educate himself in every way he could. And I can't speak enough for terms of how we prepare ourselves to be effective with clients, how important that is to be a constant student and to be constantly learning. Because I think that comes through with the authenticity, with the ability to ask really informed questions. So that to me is just about how we prepare ourselves. But I do think at the end of the day, our clients really judge us based on how we interact with them. And they don't want us to ask them the softball questions. They want the tough questions. And those are the clients that'll be with us for a long time.
On that note, let me go to Michael, because Michael's area of specialty is financial services and Wall Street. Obviously, everybody on the panel has come from different industries and different sectors. But Michael, we're in New York. You are in New York. You cover banks, trading houses, hedge funds, asset managers. What do you think separates a good recruiter on Wall Street versus a really true elite one, of course, of which you are? Oh, yes, no.
Yeah, it's great to see everyone. Richard, thanks for putting this together. And Walker, thank you for your help. The theme here, I think, is relationship management, the long game, and strategic advisor. Those are the things I think that have served me well in 30 years. You don't get to be a strategic advisor when you're 22 or 30 maybe, but you can be in this business for the long game, and it's served me well. I think that, this candidate piece that you guys were speaking about earlier is certainly overlooked and undervalued. I think many of us, myself included, in January when I closed a big search at a big bank, we got, the sort of medium list of 12 people. And then in 3 or 4 days later, we had a short list of 3 people. So many of us, and me even all these years later, it's hard to make the no phone calls to those other candidates, right? But by the way, there are plenty of search people at big firms that don't even make those calls. I mean, it's absurd that I would call Jennifer on a big search and I would leave her in the wings for weeks, if not months, or in some cases, never follow up with her. I mean, it's completely unconscionable that somebody in our industry that's a professional would do that. Mm-hmm. And, there's so many things that, Richard, I think that come into play here. Have the long view in mind. That candidate may be your next CEO or next head of a business that's going to put you into retirement money, so to speak. I mean, there's so many things, and we shouldn't even be looking at it from a financial standpoint. We should be looking at it because we're there to help that person be the best individual in that seat that they can be. And because we see so many transactions from our vantage point, right? Like, when we have a unique position in the industry, and I tell this to clients all the time, you can have your view, but it's going to be very different from my view because I'm not sitting in your bank with that viewpoint. I have a different lens, and you want me to have a different lens. As some of the ladies have said, you want to be able to question that client's comment or that client's perspective on something. And that client, if they're smart, will want you to be that person who says, hey, Susan or Joe, I think we're missing something here, and I'd like for you to look at it from this standpoint. I don't need a blue ribbon from my client when I have those moments, but they value that moment. They may never share how much you've helped them, and I'm not looking for that in return, but you build a meaningful, profound relationship with that client when you can have that impact on them. And I just think that there's a lot of young people in the business yet, and the technology and all that stuff, and LinkedIn and all the other stuff. There's nothing wrong with those tools. I use LinkedIn to connect to someone, and then I take it right to email, right? I'm not hanging out doing recruiting. And I think the other point, which I'm sure we'll get to, is the really good people, and I'm probably jumping the gun here, the really good people are never going to expose themselves. They're always going to have to dug out of the woodwork. They're not going to respond to a talent person. They're not going to respond to a LinkedIn. They're going to have to be identified in the darkest of times and hours, and you're going to have to get to them, and you're going to have to recruit those. Those are the superstars that the client want to talk to. It's not the person who's hanging out on LinkedIn offering you a resume of their current credentials. That's been my experience. So hopefully
Michael, on that note earlier on, great response. When you said that, if you're 20 or 24 or 30, you're not going to be a senior advisor. I would like, for those people who join us in the June cohort, to understand, when I was 24 and the CEO of my own firm, at the age of 24, I walked into the CEO's office at Merrill Lynch, and it was a very scary moment, and something that was defining in my search career happened that anybody on this call or anybody who's going to join us should know about, but you'll have to wait for the June 15th cohort to figure out what that is. The program overview, June through December, is very heavily focused on business development, retained search execution, candidate engagement, assessment, compensation, market intelligence, and of course, AI integration. But this is a performance system. It's not skills training. But I would like to know from the panel, because we talked about what separates good recruiters from really, truly, really good ones. That's why everybody is in this webinar and wants to hopefully attend all of the modules. But what actually wins the mandates today, please, from your point of view? What wins the mandates today in a very crowded field with lots of noise, lots of signals? How do you win really good work today? Jennifer, let me start with you.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a stab at this, because I always consistently ask my clients for feedback on how a process is going, and any insight that they have on things we can do better or not, do differently. And a couple times I've gotten this, which is typically search people are getting search opportunities after a internal team has tried a number of times to make the hire. So it's a failed search internally. The internal exec recruiting team hasn't been able to find the person for whatever reason. And so it is not the go-go days of getting phone calls and, picking up searches. The reason I mention that is it's the long-term investment. It's the having relationships with the leadership team, with the talent team, so that they can call you when it's not related to search along the way. They have questions about compensation. Michael, you made this point. We might not know the nuances, the detailed nuances of being on our clients' companies, but we have the brilliance and the opportunity to understand what's going on in a broader market. And so I get 4, 5, 6 calls a year from my really good clients that have nothing to do with searches. And they have to do with, what am I seeing in the market? What's talent saying? How are we being perceived? And so I think it's an investment long-term, which we're talking about here consistently. And it's just the realization that once you get the search call, typically it's already been tried in the market. So you have to move quickly and move fastly and get results.
Super. Perfect. Any would like to add to that, or we'll go to the next one?
I think just from the client side of things, I think certainly Marnie and Michael and Jennifer have touched on a lot of the same things that I can almost bundle in and just say demonstrating value, right? If I'm calling or a search firm because the internal team has failed, I'll want them to challenge me, challenge the hiring manager, ask those insightful questions, understand the talent problem at hand, and have a view on the market. But also it's for their expertise, right? They're bringing an expertise that an internal team just doesn't have, or lacked, maybe didn't have enough of. So
wonderful. The recruiter training performance program is also about commercial impact, I suppose, dollars and cents. So We want recruiters and everybody on this webinar and everybody who's going to attend the sessions to win more mandates. We want them to have better conversion. We want them to have stronger trust. We want them to have higher revenues. We want them to understand that small improvements compound daily. You don't get from 0 to 60 in 10 seconds unless you have a $500,000 car. There are other ways to do it, okay? And firms that win are going to build performance systems, not just depend upon individual stars or heroes. Nothing wrong with individual stars or heroes. I'm sure everyone on this webinar is one, but I think it's very important to sort of focus on that. Next question is about search execution, team panelists. What does great search execution look like today? What's changing?
I think there's a lot there other than what it just sounds as simple as it may be. I mean, I think that there's a lot of dynamics that come into this. I mean, I think it's important, and I'm sure many of us have done this. When you do win a search or you win a pitch, I think it's very important that the search professional and the client get super tight on who the marketplace is. Sometimes, because, the client's going to have their drag on their end. We're going to have our drag depending on what our expertise is in a particular market. And, the key is to get, I've always said to my clients, I'm an extension of your brand in the market, and I'm wearing your jersey when I'm working on this search. So I can get everybody on my side to move quick. I need you to get everybody on your side to move quick. And if there's not alignment there, then it becomes like a sideways thing that I can't have control of. And so, apart from doing all the traditional things that one would want to do to have a high execution rate with efficiency and speed, a lot of things have to line up, and you have to make sure that, you've educated the client. I hate to use that word because it sounds disparaging, but you need to educate the client as how you can be successful in executing a search, whether it's an MD, a global head of the business, a CEO, a board, whatever it may be. You have to have that alignment very early on. And if you do, there's going to be speed bumps along the way, but you can manage those speed bumps. If you don't have all these other things in place, I had a search that took 9 months last year, and it was a nightmare. But we ultimately made a hire, and it wasn't a nightmare because of the client necessarily. It was a very difficult search in the market. They had talked to 1,000 people, blah, blah, blah. But I think alignment is so key in anything we're doing, because the more alignment you can have with the client, the more success you're going to have. The more relationship management that you can apply with that client or that institution, you're just going to have a better overall experience. I think if you're going in there just shooting from the hip, it's not going to end well.
Michael, thanks. Michael, actually, many of the sessions, many of the modules are about how to get that alignment. So that was a great segue. Jackie, from your perspective, and Mahen, because you both have led global talent acquisition teams, Citi, Salomon, Xerox, BlackRock, and the like. What frustrated you? What didn't you like about how execution happened on your searches?
Well, I would say, and this is, an age-old problem, when the search firm would sort of hijack the whole process and keep the recruiter out of the loop, which is why I, in so many ways, try to explain to my team that you have to add value, just not be a process person, just not be the person pushing things through, and know what that impact is. And again, if you don't have the subject matter expertise, then you could flex your way in other ways. So that was a big frustration when the search firm would totally cut out the recruiting partner. It would also frustrate me because there was a fine line between me saying to the search firm, you work for me and not for the client, and you have to find that delicate balance between the two. You have to understand our comp package. You have to thoroughly understand what you're relaying. And I've been in the middle of of tug of wars where the candidate was not happy with what the search firm was presenting to them in terms of comp, and it just gets to be a big mess. So I think those were my two very frustrating points.
Yes, everybody on this webinar and everybody doing the training programs know what a big mess looks like. Oh, Mahin, anything to add before we go?
Yeah, just to follow up on Jackie, I think, just dovetailing, Michael talked about alignment. It's when you didn't feel that you were aligned with your search partner. I think, for me, with some of the frustrations when it felt like the search firm was really representing the candidate or their candidate over the client or my interests. I think that's probably the big point of frustration. And again, it goes back to just not having alignment, with
I
your
think
with your
also it's
partner.
very important for a lot of the junior recruiters, all the wonderful junior recruiters on this webinar and the ones joining the program. The junior recruiters become senior recruiters very, very quickly. And it's very important that we can give these junior recruiters out there all those skills to be just as good as better than the senior recruiters. And that's something that can be built, something that can be learned. So that's very important. One of the sessions of our modules is about AI, and it's fascinating, and we can't wait for that to happen. But I wanted to ask the panel, where does AI help recruiters, and where does it hurt recruiters? Where does it help recruiters, and where does it hurt recruiters?
I'll take it. No, go ahead, Michael.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I'm not a subject matter expert on AI, and I'm not here to be a Debbie Downer, so to speak, but this stuff is around and it's here to stay for sure. I think, and I've talked to a lot of people in the business, pioneers in the space. A friend of mine is the chief operating officer of an AI company. There's a lot of amazing things going on. A lot of my clients and I talk about AI, how they've implemented it on a trading desk. I think the real challenge around this stuff is going to be the AI organizations that are able to solve for the confidentiality piece around data and the secrecy of that data and the confidentiality of that data are going to be the winners. I think government's going to have a real tough time with it. I think industry as a whole is going to have a real tough time with it. Wall Street is going to have a very sensitive and compliance driven problem with AI. And again, I think from my vantage point, yeah, is it going to solve a lot of those mundane things that we all sit at our desk for an hour and have to deal with? Yes. Is it you've read the stories about, young investment bankers now using this stuff to create decks and spreadsheets and modeling. All those are amazing things. At the end of the day, I'm going to have to make a phone call. Jennifer's going to have to make, that part of the business is not going away. There will be a lot of nuances that come and go in the next 3 to 5 years in AI. I think we're, no pun intended, light years away from a real commercial tool that we can use to do our job. I mean, I just don't think it's going to happen.
Well, I'd like to. That's a fantastic response. I'd like to say that I laughed hysterically. I'm sorry, I won't actually laugh hysterically on this webinar, but I laughed hysterically when they said that the death of search and recruiting would happen 24 hours after LinkedIn was invented. Well, I don't know about you, but LinkedIn has made things far worse. I don't want these pictures of people popping up in all sorts. I won't go there. Jackie, what did you want to say?
I was just going to say I couldn't agree with you more, Michael. And, AI is good. I think people aren't full, as I am. I'm certainly not an expert, but I think when people think of AI, they get overwhelmed by the fact that, oh my gosh, it's going to replace my job. And I think that AI is good for process flows and scheduling and can pipeline and can pull names out of hats to shorten the time for recruiters to look for people. But it doesn't have the human interaction to bond with a candidate. It'll never replace, it can't tell the cadence of a search, whether you need a human to step in and either hurry it up or slow it down. I came from a place that towards the end, everything was all about making data-driven decisions. And that's a smart way to go. But things got so far to the right that we were forgetting about the candidate and the candidate feel, and we were being imposed by compliance that we had to fill jobs in 120 days. And, and I'd always push back and say, where did that number come from? That's a magic number. If we're talking about high volume recruiting, I can fill a job in 2 days. I mean, when Citi merged with Costco, we filled 5,000 jobs in a month. That's a no-brainer. But at the executive level, obviously there's, and to someone's point here, you have to extract someone from their job. You have to entice them to talk to you. And if things progress and they are the candidate of choice, it becomes a very emotional thing. They have to speak with their family. There might be a relocation involved. So AI cannot do all that. So, and I always said I like to keep a small group of search firms as my friends, and everything else can go to technology. So I think it'll never replace the human bond with candidates.
I have one last thing on this, Richard. I think it's really interesting. Can I throw
Please,
something in there?
yes.
So to everyone's point here, I was thinking about it over the last couple of weeks after Richard, you asked me to be on this panel with AI, and I literally went into Google Gemini 2 days ago. How does AI help executive recruiting? AI cannot measure emotional intelligence, culture alignment, or leaders' gravitas and presence. Ultimately, AI builds a highly precise data foundation so that human recruiters and board members can focus 100% of their energy on relationship building, vetting character, and closing the deal. And I think that's just so fascinating based on what we've all talked about.
This is what I want, particularly the younger members and the intermediate members. I mean, there are partners that are going to be doing the program. They're going to be very senior level people who have stopped billing or need to be reprogrammed, or, by the way, have never been trained. Since this is the first formal training program in the industry, many people were not properly trained, and we don't talk about 1 week of training when you get to a firm and that's it. I think that's very, very important for the younger people and the more inexperienced people in the program, Jennifer, because that's what it is, right? AI is not going to replace cognitive.
That's right.
It's not going to replace judgment and context and contextualizing. And if you are a 22-year-old person and you are going to meet the CEO of a company, you've got to have more than, a bag of tricks. You've got to. This is why I want people to join the cohort, because I will tell people when I was 24 how I did it back then, and that was in 1583. It was very, 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 very exciting. I'm going to be very, very naughty now and discard the last question before we have question and answers from the wonderful attendees who have logged in and who want to be part of this. I'd like to ask each of you any advice that you could give the audience, those who are joining today, but also there are many, many who couldn't be here today, but will be joining us. What advice do you have in terms of this program, and what should they be focused on, and what should they be thinking about? So, Jennifer, I'll start with you.
I think I was blessed. I grew up at Korn Ferry. I was under the mentorship of some incredibly talented senior partners like Richard and others. And so I created a toolkit very early in my career that I still carry today. So I think systematically and fundamentally, as you're rising in your career, watch people, colleagues, peers, partners, see what you like, what you don't like. There is a science to this business, and I think you need to figure out what that toolkit is for yourself, what your lanes are, what you're really good at, and be really authentic around it. I also think that we've talked about this amongst our panel. This is an incredibly important industry that we're in. We are literally changing lives. We can never underestimate the emotion that goes behind moving people into different positions, different careers. It's incredibly emotional, sensitive, serious stuff. Let's not forget it. But it's also not heart surgery. We are not having people in the emergency room dying left and right. So I think enjoy the business and have fun with the business, and just continue to have interest in what's going on in the world.
Jennifer, I love the pit, but we won't go into the pit right now. But anyway, Michael, what about you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I lived in Chicago for 10 years where I got in the business 1,000 years ago. And and when I came to New York in 1998, 30 years ago, or whatever that math is, I've just always loved the business. I came from a bond trading environment at a young age, and I got into search fairly young after 7 years on Wall Street. And the things that I've learned over the years that I try to coach to young search people, to young traders and salespeople on Wall Street is, you know, n nobody's getting a pass in life. Nobody's coming to save you. You have to do the work. And the hack to success is do the work. If you do the work, the results are always there. It's guaranteed. You're not going to logically figure that out because if you could, everyone would be doing that. You've got to work in silence. You've got to make that last phone call. You've got to go the extra mile. And when you do that, the universe, whatever good luck you're looking for, whatever opportunities you're trying to chase down, I promise you, from my own experience in 30 years, if you do the work, you will be extraordinarily successful beyond your wildest dreams. If you think you're going to do something as a shortcut, you're living in a state of delusion that you think you can build a career path off of that. It just doesn't work that way. Everyone has to take their steps up the side of the mountain. You've got to be willing to let your ankle break, your knee get bruised, and you've got to have this undaunting relentlessness that you're going to the top no matter what. And the likelihood that there's going to be a lot of other people who are going to have that same devotion and dedication that you do, the resolve that you do to make it to the top, there's not going to be any competition there. Most people will quit. Don't be a quitter.
Thank you, Michael. There are no shortcuts in this industry. If every executive recruiter on this webinar and in these sessions thought of executive search like Cirque du Soleil, there would be no shortcuts. They break their neck. Marnie, how about you?
I'll piggyback off of what Michael and Jennifer just said. I mean, just from my experience, and I was so thankful to have been raised inside of Spencer Stuart, where I sometimes say I was surrounded by Neanderthals, but the intimidation was I was around people who were relentless in their desire to get it right and in their desire to go take every step they could to deliver the best product for their clients. And that wore off. And it makes it easier later on if you have that mindset of going that extra distance, putting in the extra hours. And Jennifer, you said that search is a science, and I couldn't agree more. But then as we, I think, evolve in our lives as recruiters, we begin to realize that we're holding two things at once, where it's an art and a science, and that we evolve into that person and someone who is, as we've talked about AI and how it doesn't take the place of judgment. As we develop, we're able to, when we're at our best, to marry information with judgment. And that's why I do think that at senior levels, AI will not be able to replace that. I think work, learn everything you can, look at in your organization who you think is doing it really well, study them. And
yeah,
to me, that's the answer. That was the answer for me, is that I modeled the people that were relentless in their desire to serve their clients really well and be the best they could be.
Perfect, Marnie. Couldn't be better. Jackie, what's your advice? You've trained literally thousands and thousands and thousands of recruiters, and
Okay.
you have the scars to show for it, right?
Yeah. All right. Look, I would say that you should continue to challenge the status quo. Before I joined Solomon Brothers, I was a partner in my own recruiting firm. And it was very small, very scrappy. And I knew that I was on a commission. And if I didn't place people, I wouldn't have a paycheck. And that just, it just brought out the drive in me that I love talking to people, matching skills. When I got to Solomon, the recruiting was all over the map. I don't even know why they hired me, because all of the different departments were doing their own recruiting. And I questioned the status quo. And I went to my manager and said, why is derivatives technology doing their own recruiting? And I made a list of all the business heads, and I sat down with them and I met with them all. And it took me 3 years of hard work. But after 3 years, I was able to centralize all of the recruiting into our team and have a unified recruiting team. And that was because I questioned, I used to say to my team, when a hiring manager says to you, what do you think? That you've reached nirvana, because then they value you, you have credibility with them. And it's a long road, it takes a lot of work. But look, traditionally on the corporate side, recruiting was always a second-class citizen, because hiring managers thought they could do it on their own all the time, or they had their own relationships. While the reality was, when hiring managers wrote a job description, it was a wish list. And I would say to the team, question how many of these qualifications are necessary. Maybe you can cast a wider net. Would you give up 10% of the job description for potential? I mean, you really have to examine, and just don't be a yes person. Don't be a paper pusher. I couldn't stress that more.
Perfect. Wonderful. Mahen, final over to you.
Just to build on what the rest of the panel is saying, I think that, this is an apprenticeship at the end, and so you learn by seeing what your mentors are doing, and incorporating it and finding your own voice, finding your own style, and I think all of us have worked under some fantastic managers, worked with some fantastic colleagues, and you take a little piece of maybe what they do, and you incorporate it and maybe mold it into your own, and that's that creates that level of authenticity. So
thank you. What an incredible panel, and I'm so grateful to all of you. We have time for some questions that have come in. First question is, and please put questions in the chat, and if we can't get to them now, I will answer them directly, every single one of them, to you. How is this program different from other programs that may focus on sort of training? That's an interesting question. Most training programs focus on process, systems, compliance, onboarding, LinkedIn, AI. This program focuses only on performance. It was built really from real executive search experience. As I like to say, my biggest credential is my PhD in failure. If I can help all of you not get a PhD in failure, be wiser, that will be a good outcome. It's designed to improve commercial outcomes, winning work, improving execution quality, strengthening client relationships, improving conversion rates, and driving revenue. And it is not theoretical, it's very practical. So that's very good. Another question that's just come in is, what measurable outcomes should we expect after completing this program? Oh, someone would ask that. Well, we kind of look at outcomes across several dimensions. Increased search wins. We all want increased search wins, correct? We want better conversion rates. We want stronger client retention. We want to do things more differently and in ways that are groundbreaking. We want to get that alignment that Jennifer and Michael and Jacqueline was talking about. So the goal is to sort of create a repeatable system so that, in different cycles, good and bad cycles, it's very important. Will these sessions be interactive or panel focused? They will be interactive. This is your only chance to engage with this panel. But if you want the panel back for series 2, then please let me know, and we can have them back. Okay. The next question was, what role does talent intelligence play in recruiter performance? Well, for those people who don't know, or those recruiters don't know, I created or was one of the pioneers of talent intelligence, which changes the conversation. It allows you to speak to your clients about the markets, before a mandate ever happens and before they ever give you a job to find someone. So understanding how to do that, understanding about talent scarcity, compensation metrics, providing insights before the client even asks you, that is talent intelligence, and that's really important. Another question, what are the biggest mistakes firms make when trying to improve recruiter performance? What are the biggest mistakes firms make when trying to improve recruiter performance? Now, let me think. Three things usually happen. First, firms assume that experience automatically creates capability. It doesn't. There are plenty of 24-year-olds on this webinar and in our program that can run circles around people twice their age, number one. Number two, training becomes an event and not a system. Therefore, if anyone believes that they're going to get nirvana from this webinar or from any of the 10 modules, it is not going to happen, even though I'd like to tell you it's going to happen. It will only happen if you put it day in and day out in terms of everything you do for the rest of your life, or as Michael in his analogy talked about going to the top of the mountain. That was a very wonderful analogy. Thank you, Michael, on that. Third, leadership enthusiasm fades. Oh, it was great webinar. It was a great series of modules. Let's go back to operating exactly the way we were. Somebody once taught me that the 7 most dangerous words in the English language are, we have always done it this way. So if you don't want to die, I suggest you all sign up for the webinar as soon as you've finished. The firms and you who invest in recruiter capability, execution quality, you're going to pull ahead. And all of the panelists have talked about that today, because AI is not removing the human premium, but it is showing where it truly exists. So before we finish, I'd like to obviously thank our panel of great experts today. Your insights, perspectives, and experience have been outstanding. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Mahen. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Moni. Thank you, Michael. We're going to provide a link to the Recruiter Performance Training Program. We're also going to provide a link to the 2 videos that I wanted you to watch, because you must, if you do nothing else today, watch the 1997 commercial for Apple, and you must see the 2-minute video that I actually did myself, I created, which is important. And we've had some other questions about great books. What do you recommend for me to read? I can't tell you that until you sign up to the webinar. That's another story. I suggest you all please go to www.hsiqtalentintelligence.com. I don't want to make this into a Liberty Mutual commercial, but HSiQtalentintelligence.com. HSiQtalentintelligence.com. That will give you an access to the link. You can sign up, program details, module information, registration process. We hope today gave you some practical ideas for fresh perspectives, understanding that it doesn't matter where you are or who you are, you can be better than anybody else out there if you just apply yourself, and don't let anybody tell you that. My ambition is for you to ring circles around all the big billers in the companies you work for and to show them what's what. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing many of you in our June cohort. Thank you very much for attending, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you for
Thanks,
having
guys.
us.
Good to see everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Once upon a time, business as usual was often good enough. No more. Where we are going, good enough is dead. In a world where everything is connected, where everything is equally excellent, where performance is reaching perfection, there's only one space left to innovate in: you. Right now, you are a central point of the raging tornado of change fueled by digitization, mobilization, augmentation, disintermediation, automation, well, the list goes on. Science fiction is becoming science fact. Think about self-driving cars, or computers that can learn and think. The way we work will never be the same. The skills we need will be dramatically different. Winning or losing are now happening faster than ever before. So, what's your response? Human-only traits such as creativity, imagination, intuition, emotion, and ethics will be even more important in the future because machines are very good at simulating, but not at being. We need to go beyond technology and data to reach human insight and wisdom. Technology represents the how of change, but humans represent the why. The future is about holistic business models. The opportunity is to be liquid, to learn just in time, not just in case. Not single improvements, but complete transformations. Not individual systems, but new ecosystems. Humanity is where true and lasting value is created. We will engage, relate, and buy things because of the experiences they provide, because of their transformative power. The new way to work is to embrace technology, but not to become it. The future is in technology, yet the bigger future lies in transcending it. Let's live and lead from here.